Good afternoon, friends. Thank you so much for joining this particular session on the budget live, which is on etcfo.com by the Economic Times. The first reaction since today is a big day, budget day that we are receiving from the audience, the India Inc., and the industry at large on the budget is it's a budget which is a growth oriented, it's a balanced budget which will take India forward. And the government has actually done a lot without adding different taxes into the budget. That's what the first reaction that I am receiving from the audience at large. But here I have the top CFOs of India Inc. joining me with other external resources as well, like economists and all. And we'll try to decode what matters to the India Inc. over the next 40-45 minutes in this particular session on the budget. So the government in its budget, or rather the finance minister, has done a lot of things, not only boosting infrastructure, but there is skilling the youths, boosting the startup ecosystem, announcing new businesses like tourism, millets, and giving some grants over there, and so much. So we'll try to understand how helpful this is for the India Inc. at large and how our CFOs looking at it. So allow me to introduce you to my panelists. My first speaker for this particular panel discussion is Mr. Rohit Nair, CFO of Care India. Rohit ji, glad to have you.
Yeah, thank you, Amol, for having me. Very good afternoon to all tuned in.
Thank you. My next speaker is Mr. Hemant Kumar Ria, Subcontinent Region Head, DP World. Hemant ji, glad to have you. Thank you. My next speaker is Mr. Sandeep Jhunjhunwala, Senior Partner, Nangia Anderson LLP. Sandeep ji, glad to have you.
Thank you, Amol. Good evening, everyone.
Thank you. Good evening. Good afternoon. We are at just exactly at 4 o'clock. So we are on the threshold of good afternoon and good evening. So thank you, Sandeep ji. I also have two more speakers joining me very soon, Jyotsna Sharma and Madhvi Arora, as we'll take them as in the show as soon as they join. I think there are some network issues there. But let's begin with our conversation. And Rohit ji, I will come to you first. So the government has actually announced slew of measures, not only on the infrastructure side, but also on the new businesses as well. As a CFO, how do you read this budget and what does this budget mean for you and your sector?
Yeah, thanks, Amol. I think, as you mentioned at the outset, I would like to congratulate our finance minister. This was her fifth straight budget, and I think she has again tried to give us a mix of balance and growth. Uh, So I believe consistency, I think that's the key theme if we look at the budgets over the year. And consistency is the belt that in fact fastens excellence in position. So I'm a big believer in the consistency aspect, and this is what transforms average into excellence. So it's really in that sense, a budget has maintained the continuity and consistency, and with focus on the Saptarishi as areas as ma'am called out. I think it should really augur well for the industry, and especially this time the middle class as well. I think that was one area where we were all there were a lot of noise around expectations of middle class being ignored, but I think she has done a good balancing job this time. Thank you.
Amol, you are on mute, I guess.
I'm so sorry. Hemanji, let me come to you and take your perspective in terms of how do you rate this budget and what does this budget mean for you?
Thank you, Amolji. I think the first budget in Amrit Kal and the fifth of Mrs. Sitaraman, I think the government has done a wonderful job. If I were to put three words for the budget, it's a budget which signifies sustainable, heady growth because it's all encompassing. The Saptarishis, if you notice, they start with inclusivity, and they have pretty much picked up everything that could have been picked up and which we were, faltering on. And they have created a budget which will take us well into Amrit Kal and beyond. So I think it's a great initiative, and the kind of money that is being spent on infrastructure. I mean, 4.5% effective, 4.5% of the GDP. Your the push on everything starting from tourism to the push on green. I mean, that's a big one. They have really, really pushed green this time, really big. So let's say the connectivity to the regional hubs on the heliports and the airports, the 2.5 lakh crore, 2.4 to be precise, on railways. I mean, that's a significant jump. That's really going to change the connectivity across the country. And again, another sign of inclusivity from across. So I think it's a budget which is really going to help us to grow big time.
Sure. Uh, Thanks for joining, Madhavi, as well. I think Madhavi is already here now. Good to see you, Madhavi. I will come to you, but let me shoot my question to Sandeep ji first. Sandeep ji, we are all talking about growth, and we think, and everyone is praising budget for taking the growth forward. How do you see it? Do you see clients are running to your office now? Do you see your phone is really very busy? The global investors are calling you and investing heavily into India. How do you see the next week and the month forward after this budget now?
Thanks, Amol. I think in any budget, one of the prime expectations and the section that people look for is Part B of the speech, which the Honorable Finance Minister also spoke about in today's budget. Now, I think overall, definitely, as both Rohit and Hemant pointed out, I also believe that this is an extremely forward-looking budget because her speech spoke about how India could achieve net zero carbon emissions by 2070. A lot of emphasis on green growth, which definitely is required. A lot of emphasis on technology per se. I mean, especially on the tax sections. She spoke about how technology has helped. Getting 45% of tax return being processed within 24 hours. She spoke about the average processing time of tax refunds getting reduced from 90 odd days to around 2 weeks or so. 6.5 crore returns getting processed in a year. I think so. I think this government has done a phenomenal job in terms of deploying some of this technology, which definitely is required in in a ecosystem like India, where India is now poised to become the top 5 economies across the world. So definitely, I also feel that this budget has been extremely forward-looking in that sense. As far as foreign investors are concerned, though I saw a lot of anxiety probably on the stock market indices, but that may probably not be the right indicator to say whether the budget probably was investor friendly or not. But having introduced no surprise taxes, no increase in corporate tax rates, etc., definitely is going to benefit India in the longer term from an investment perspective.
Sure. In fact, thanks for highlighting the tax part. In fact, she also mentioned that number of tax returns were also filed in 24 hours, I think processed in 24 hours. And there was a good data points she gave. Madhavi, we are waiting to listen to you because economists' view is always different. Whenever the finance minister gives subsidy, world is happy, but not the economists. So here I would like you to tell us how happy are you or whether you are happy. That is point number one. And point number two, when the government is saying that the fiscal deficit they will bring down to 5.9%, and going ahead next financial year they will bring it down to 4.5%. At
Mhm.
what point the government is also spending a lot. It's not that they're not spending. What makes them so confident that they will bring down FD, I mean the fiscal deficit, to 4.5% going ahead?
No, so I think the numbers look credible. Generally, if I start off with what you asked me, whether it's a good budget or a bad budget. Technically, no budget should be a bad budget, right? I mean, this time around, they have also ensured they had the constraint in terms of bringing the fiscal consolidation, path in order. So the idea was to ensure that the fiscal impulse is maximized while they are still adhering to the medium-term fiscal sustainability path, because there is no two way about the fact that they have to bring the fiscal deficit down. And but despite doing that, then supposed to be ensuring that whatever spending they're doing is supposed to be bringing a much higher multiplier impact in the medium term to increase the potential growth. To that extent, it does require continued reforms in financial sectors, manufacturing, better resource allocation, and stuff like that, which is what they've tried to highlight in the last 2 or 3 years, and which has continued this year around as well. The focus of expenditure has been on rural welfare, infra, PLIs, as well as energy transition this time around, which again will further add into the quality of spend that one is talking about. Capex spend, as everybody's talking about, is as a percent of GDP is almost 3.3%. Pre-pandemic, the government was spending close to 1.8, 1.9%, which increased post-pandemic to close to 2.5, 2.6%. Last year also they had spent close to 2.8%. This time around, the kind of jump that you have seen, especially of that 40% is coming in railways, clearly would have a good multiplier effect on the economy as we go ahead. And of course, will have an impact on employment as well. So this will again sort of one supposedly crowd in the still lacking private capex. We still have to see if that really works, given the fact that we are looking at a downward direction in the economy in general. And two, whether it will lead to an employment generation in the medium term. Looking at the numbers, credibility, I think to some extent, tax buoyancy looks to be a little higher to me this time around, because generally when the economy is on a relatively downward trajectory, the tax buoyancy is start lower than the normal GDP growth. So I think there could be a downside surprise that they may see on the tax numbers, but that could also be partly countered by the fact that they have taken a relatively lower RBI dividend this time around. RBI had done a huge FX sale, which would give them close to, in my estimates, close to 800 billion to 1 lakh crore plus kind of net profit, which they should ideally transfer to the government of India. Plus, even PSU banks also were very healthy this time around, so they should be able to give much higher dividend. So I think both of them combined could counter the lower tax buoyancy that we may see. Of course, the divestment continues to be a question mark, how much they will actually be able to raise via the divestment proceeds. And more importantly, the strategic divestment that they are looking to get into in the next couple of years or so will also be difficult, because large part of the holdings are now in utilities and commodity sectors. And if at all the sector goes through a difficult time in the coming year, I don't think they will be willing to really, get into a divestment sale of these particular entities. Of course, they have done some tax tweaks, as all of you have been mentioning, which sort of provides benefit to the middle class. And of course, the marginal tax rate also has been reduced, which obviously will help the highest income strata as well. And both of them, at the margin, could have a consumption multiplier effect in the economy, which is going through a fading consumption growth story as well. So I think net, the government policy impulse has been right. The fiscal multiplier effect also will be better, even though we are consolidating. And to the extent that the government has continued to adhere to the fiscal sustainability path in the medium term, I think, given the constraint that they have, it looks to be a decent play.
Okay, sure. Noted your points. Thanks for highlighting many points, Madhavi. I will come back to you on the divestment and the borrowing part a little later. Let me bring Hemant here and take more perspective on the infrastructure point. So, Hemant, you're also catering to, in fact, logistics industry. So, tell me something more about it. The kind of capex which the government wants to put into infrastructure. What kind of opportunities do you see as a CFO, not only for you but logistics sector as a whole in going ahead, and what kind of contribution do you think that the sector will add to the economy?
So if you see, as I said, 4.5% effective, 4.5% of the GDP is going on capex, and it's going to they're going to put it on things like your railways. You're going to put it on roads, airports, heliports. It's all about, and that kind of money, if it is going, it's going to help jobs big time. Okay. B, it is going to improve connectivity, not only for people but for the movement of goods, which means it's going to lower your cost of logistics. Okay, they're talking of coastal. Okay, that is again another method of reducing the cost and speeding up the time. They're talking of some X of investment on the railways. Now, that again is going to help the dedicated freight corridors and the national logistics policy that they have spoken of. So, all in all, I think it's going to lead to a sustained uh, growth for in the infra space, and which will have ramifications on the economy in terms of employment, in terms of speed, in terms of costs, and it's if there, and we all know there will be some headwinds that we'll face during the course of the coming year, because how the environment is. But I'm sure that
Right.
all the effort that is being put here, even if there are headwinds, it'll be more than compensated. And I believe it's going to be a great sustainable growth story.
Hmm. Uh, Rohit, what do you pick up when the government thinks specifically about investing into new businesses or supporting new businesses, whether it's millets, whether it's kind of providing opportunity to startups and creating a whole digital ecosystem and building a strong digital infrastructure? How do you pick it up? I mean, how do you see as a CFO, and opportunities in this particular domains?
Yeah, thanks, Samuel. I think this is for me quite a big highlight of the budget. They're talking about setting up 5G labs, which is going to really boost connectivity in the rural hinterland. There's a lot of focus on crop diversification, millets, movement to natural farming, which is again going to provide great impetus to our agriculture sector. On the startup also, there is a proposal to increase the tax holiday by a year, and even the provisions for carry forward of losses for another the 10 years. So there's a lot of consistency and continuity in this, and it was really heartening to know, as we've all been experiencing now, India is the third largest. We have the ecosystem for startups. So I think the whole world probably is looking at India now. IMF has already said that India is the shining jewel, and the growth rate predicted for India is the highest amongst all countries. So I think
Yes.
has been a lot of push and focus in these areas. Of course, God is in the execution, but directionally, I think we couldn't have asked for more. Now it's up to I think uh, all of us, uh, whether through purely government efforts or public-private partnerships, because there is a lot of incentives around the tourism sector as well, and I think that would also provide great fillip both to domestic and international tourism. So we can really leverage and count on our religious tourism, medical tourism. So a lot has been put forth through, and of course there would be some fine print which we all still need to review. But overall, I think it
Right.
really very exciting times for all of us here, and I hope and I wish that we deliver on this. Thank you.
Sure. Thanks, Rohit. Jyotsna ji, glad to have you. We have Jyotsna Sharma here also. Let
Hi.
me come to you. Yeah, let me come to you, Jyotsna ji. Sandeep, I want you to add something specifically on the ease of doing business part, because when we speak about the businesses, right, at one side the government has not increased the capital gain tax or no revision on the short-term gain tax, which is kind of very helpful for the market. But when we look at the industry at the large, they always look for the ease of doing business. While we are talking about the growth, but there is nothing specific on that side in terms of XYZ segments will be removed. But largely or broadly, the government has said, a lot of licenses will be avoided, and what you can say, the industry will have a seamless licenses and something like that. So how do you read that part specifically for the ease of doing business?
Yeah, sure. I think the finance minister in her speech spoke about how the government is looking at trust-based governance. I think these were the words that she used. And there were a couple of announcements that probably hints towards how the government is looking at further easing the doing of business in India. Just to give you an example, she mentioned about PAN being used as a common business identifier going forward, which was definitely an ask of the business. So that's going to help. She spoke about a centralized processing center, that could come up for all the filings which are related to Companies Act. We have a CPC which is very well known from an income tax standpoint, but coming up with the same concept for Companies Act, I think that part of the filing is going to probably get eased up the moment there is a CPC which will take care of all the corporate filings. I mean, they are trying to revamp the website as well. We call it version 2, version 3, and all that, which is also happening in parallel. And a lot of other instances where she spoke about how some of the provisions are getting aligned to decriminalize. She said that there are around 3,400 laws or provisions that they are going to look at and decriminalize those offenses to make it more of for filing non-compliance or a regularization that will happen, and this will not be considered as criminal offenses. So I think government definitely is looking at this area very seriously, and there has been announcements which have not only happened during the budget but also during other part of the year as well, in terms of ease of doing business in India.
Right. No, sure. Madhavi, on the again disinvestments and divestment part, the government has been making ambitious plans. This time they don't have anything specific, but the projects which they have already announced last year are the government yet to achieve that goal. Obviously, they came with big projects like LIC came into the market. Given the divestment plans which the government has in mind, what could be the other ways for government when it comes to borrowing? Because the capex cycle specifically is also very high. That how up the capital expenditure has laid out by more than 33%. So how do you see the government's borrowing going ahead specifically for the coming financial year? And if you allow me to add to it, I know this is not going to be your subject directly, but will that really help in terms of private cycle to pick up now? Madhavi, you're on mute.
Yeah, so you asked me 3 questions. One on divestment. So as you rightly said, there's a big backlog that they have to clear first before looking to add the layer to it. They said around everyone's hoping that IDBI may be the best contender to get this kind of a revenue gain that they're expecting, but we'll have to see how it really pans out. I don't think that LIC resale will happen this year around. And also, if the commodity cycle turns out to be a little weaker, I don't think they'll be touching any of the commodity firms that they have in their hands. So I think a bit of a trouble for them as they go ahead. They've tried doing a lot of strategic divestment, wherein basically one big PSU is buying a smaller one, and technically it is still looking to be a divestment, but basically change of hand from one government entity to another. So they can do all these strategic divestments. They can also do some functional infrastructure monetization, all of those things, which could be monetized like land and other spaces. They can still be done in a very large scale, but they obviously require a lot of political support within the within the government machinery. So I think that's a little difficult call to take. As far as the other sources of borrowing are concerned, of course, the market borrowing is obviously the biggest source of their funding. In the last 2-3 years, market borrowing actually had come down to roughly 50% or so of total fiscal deficit, partly because small savings had taken a very big share of funding. So whatever the new National Small Saving Fund was, incrementally investing in government securities was basically seen as a big source of funding for the government of India. To the extent that they were at one point funding only 3% of fiscal deficit, which is now increased to as high as 30% plus. And with the kind of schemes that the government has announced in this budget, especially the female-centric deposit schemes, again, should be able to attract more savings in the NSSF fund, and probably could be able to sort of fund the government bond fiscal deficit as well, to the extent of more than 4.5-5 lakh crore, which is what they have budgeted for this year as well. So I think that remains a big thing to watch out for. Apart from that, I think any which way they are bringing down their fiscal deficit as a percent of GDP, but of course, an absolute level is still a very high number. And the net borrowing for this year is close to 12 lakh crore, which is still a very high number to absorb for the bond market. We are hoping that there will be some kind of a adjustment, or probably the new players in the bond market, which are basically your NPS, incrementally the way the AUM of NPS is growing, they should be able to fund the incremental GSEC supply that is coming in the market. Of course, insurance is again a growing player, but with the new announcement the government has done, I think there's a good chance that the FRA products, which a lot of banks subscribe to for insurance, would be pressurized, because the growth of insurance
Right.
generally would be difficult to sustain. So I think there are some challenges here and there, but largely the funding pressure at this point in time looks to be still managed for me.
Okay, okay. Thanks for adding that, Madhavi. Uh, Jyotsnaji, let me come to you now and take, first of all, your perspective in terms of how do you read budget, and what has budget maybe done to your sector? What do you think will be there specifically for you in this budget?
Right. Thanks, Amol. Uh, Coming on to overall feel of the budget, I would say it has been in line with what the government has been driving over the previous years. What was a good feel of the budget was it covered practically every aspect of the economy. Uh, Going into the details, you will find they all are interrelated. Maybe you might not see anything directly to a particular sector, maybe automobile or agriculture. But if you try to link all the sectors giveaway together, you will certainly be able to figure out that it does come together to give benefits to every sector. That was my first feel or first impression as I heard through the budget. Coming specific to the automobile industry, as we all are aware, manufacturing forms a huge part of GDP in India, almost 45% or so. And within that, automobile holds a huge amount of portion, that is 26%. Having a lot of focus on the EVs from future perspective. So if you see, we have seen the relaxation given to capex imports in terms of custom duty relief to promote lithium batteries, or the focus on green mobility. It's looking ahead. The budget is not just an annual budget. It is really focusing to build on the future. So what I see is this is a budget is to become future ready as a strong economy. So straight onto the automobile industry, you would not find anything in specific in terms of any particular scheme coming on for the automobile industry or the tire industry, to be more specific. But I feel overall the scrapping of vehicles gives you a benefit. The lithium battery is base for future to develop your future automobile industry, and the relief on direct taxes certainly pushes the economy, and we will see more vehicles rolling on. So mobility is focused across all the sectors. Also, if you see the benefits given to sectors like agriculture, infrastructure cannot move ahead without the support from mobility. So we will see the automobile industry growing on the basis of the benefits given to the other sector, is what I would simply state.
Sure, Jyotsnaji. In fact, we are all seeing the EVs rolling out. Many of my friends have bought electric vehicles, and if you are in Lower Parel, you see a lot of Nexon's new version, here in the Lower Parel area. So it's a great fillip and relief for sure. I think Madhavi has to leave. So Madhavi, let me ask you one quick question before you leave. You spoke about the reforms. So by any chance, do you want to add what kind of reforms the government should have done or needs to be done, which is missing in this budget?
I think, see, the broad policy prerogative is correct. I don't think there's any additional lineup of things that I need to talk about as such. They have been focusing specifically in the manufacturing sector because they want to make the whole Make in India theme work in the country. But the unfortunate part is that everybody around the world is doing the same Atmanirbharta thing, because the world is now moving to a semi-globalized or deglobalized regime. So I'm not very sure how much of the Make in India theme could give them the returns that they're expecting in the next 10 years or so. Because look at this, even US is also having its own chips act. They don't want Taiwan, China to be a part of the whole battery regime. Plus, basically everybody is now doing friendshoring and trying to find their ways and means to be more deglobalized or semi-globalized or near globalized to their own friends and partners. So I'm not sure how much India will actually gain on that front. I think they have given a lot of export swaps and probably added some import duties on certain segments so that domestic manufacturing is encouraged. But of course, in the medium term, if you want to see a more free flow of trades of goods and services, these kind of duties anyway don't really help you. I think they're short-term measures, but in the medium term, it's all about improving productivity in general, rather than looking at creating barriers of imports and exports in general.
Sure, totally your points, Madhavi. Uh, Let me move to Rohit and take your specific Rohit, your views on, because you work in a very NGO type and environment. It's a very social kind of an activity that you are doing. Yes, Madhavi, thank you so much for joining. So Rohit, then my question to you is: the government has spoken a lot about education, right, and reskilling and everything. How do you see that contributing to India Inc. as a whole? Because today I see that is a big mismatch. At one side the unemployment ratio is going high, and on the other side there are people who are looking for a job, right? So do you see that whole reskilling approach under the Kaushalya skills or whatever program that the government has adopted is actually will make a big sense for India Inc. as a whole?
Yeah, I think, yeah, again, that's the step in the right direction. We really need to skill our youth, empower them, and that is where it has to be a combination, of skilling coupled with use of effective technology. So that's where the whole initiatives around setting up the 5G labs and having this Skill India digital initiative getting rolled out is, if done right, could be a great game changer. Because today's youth also, I think the jobs of yesterday will not be the jobs of the future. So we need to come up with more innovative ways and means to ensure that how we can productively put our this demographic dividend to use. And in that sense, I think and this has a cascading impact on the economy when, as Hemanji also mentioned, with the capex outlay, with the invest focus on railways expansion, and coupled with all the tech initiatives, this is an endeavor along with the modernization of agriculture. The government has really set up a blueprint or a broad framework around how to really intertwine all the sectors together, which could really provide great fillip to the growth. And today, if you again look at all the surveys, one of the top issues for the corporates is also shortage of talent. So
Yes.
that is also a welcome step, that how we can really tap into the youth and see how we can really skill them to make them more industry ready. And now it is, the government has made a beginning, like there were already a lot of efforts put in. And if done right, I think this is going to be a win-win situation position for all of us. On one side, the youth would get a lot of opportunities to train themselves in new courses and AI centers. That's again
Yes.
something which is very, very future oriented. So I think all these moves are very welcome from all of us. I can take the
Correct.
liberty, on behalf of all the panelists, that I think these really augur very well for the industry. And So we are definitely on the right path, I would say. Thank you.
No, in fact, the finance minister, while discussing about this Kaushalya scheme or a clever residential school or establishing such schools in partnership with states and NGOs, said a very nice statement. And the statement was something like this, if I, got it right, that transition from manhole to machine hold, is what she said. I think so. On that direction, it will be really nice to see that's happening. Hemanji, let me ask you a very interesting question, which is actually the close to the CFO's mind. The kind of tax revolution that the finance minister is talking about, which Sandeep partly highlighted some time back. What is your view on that? Is that Vivad Se Vishwas and the trust and the faceless assessments are actually working for a CFO? Because CFOs generally work aggressively and far more actively with the tax departments uh, for the compliance and the risk assessments and everything. So, how do you see, the government's initiative in simplifying tax? Is it happening or it's just on paper? What is your view there?
So let me, in corporate life, the most important thing for a CFO becomes predictability. Okay. Now the government has gone ahead and I mean, they started with a vision which was always predictable. So your budgets haven't had the kind of surprises that one would have seen earlier. They have been very, very predictable. And I'm now using this correlation into the specific question, Amolji, you asked, that there also, what I am more interested in is hassle-free predictability assessments, be it in the direct tax regime, indirect tax regime, or in the anything to do with the government as far as the Companies Act and other compliances are concerned. Now, I do believe that with every year, they have only become better. I mean, it's not a overnight. You flip a switch and suddenly, voila, you have light. That's not going to happen. But what will definitely happen is what is happening is that slowly but progressively, uh, it's becoming predictable. It's becoming. I mean, I am sleeping peacefully, knowing fully well that I know what can go wrong and what will not go wrong, and I'm in all probabilities. There's no certainty in life, but in all probabilities, I will not have a surprise in any of the assessments, stroke interactions, stroke compliances. So, to answer your question, Amolji, I think we are on the right path. Have we reached Nirvana? The answer is no. Obviously, there's still some way to go. But for sure, we're on the right path. And well before the end of Amritkal, I think we'll reach, if you may, Nirvana or the first version of Nirvana. The Nirvana is always a
Sure. No,
something
I
which
think
you
you're
have to.
sleeping well in the night. That itself is a great achievement. If CFOs are catching a good sleep without worrying whether the income tax department will knock on the door, I think that itself is a good sign of an improvement. Sandeep, I have a very important question, and then we'll take one important question to all of you, starting with Jyotsna. But Sandeep, just quickly tell me something very important now. There is a push towards enhancing business activities under Gift City by single window clearance, and also IFSC and SE's head, and a lot more announcement the government has done in that direction. Obviously, didn't go into detail, didn't have that time. But how do you read that? Do you think that this will be really helpful for the foreign investors, foreign companies to enter India, or even Indian companies doing the transactions abroad?
Yeah, I mean, see, gift is not a new concept per se. It was introduced a couple of years back, and it actually gathered a lot of attention in the year in which it was introduced. But overall had some kind of ambiguities which were required to be streamlined. So I think moving in the right direction, probably the finance minister has picked some of the representations that were made to make the gift city, investment opportunity a more lucrative option for the non-residents. And I think that's where all this announcement related to single window clearance, banks, clearing, having their kiosks within the gift city, moving some of the offshore funds to gift city may not be considered as a transaction which will be liable to capital gains. I think that's where all these announcements have taken place. So I think this is again a step taken in the right direction, and definitely with all these ambiguities being ironed out in the current budget, gift probably will garner more attention to the non-resident investors.
Sure. Noted your points. Jyotsna ji, the government has also spoken about a lot of green initiatives, boosting green hydrogen, helping the startups, those who want to work in this area, because the target is also to go net zero by 2070. How do you see opportunities in that particular area, specifically when you mentioned some time back that electrical vehicles are picking up? And do you see now the government is also aligned very aggressively and diligently in this segment? In fact, one thing which we should always appreciate is that in the last couple of months after committing 2070 net zero target, they have been constantly talking about it whenever, whether it's a G20 dialogue or anywhere. Sometimes we feel that, okay, now this is the point where the government will talk about green initiatives, right? So how do you see the business opportunities henceforth for you, considering specifically in automobile, now electric vehicle is also picking up?
Right. Actually, the whole concept of green has supported two areas, coming on with startups who think around their own future, because they're all young generation and they really seek out what is it that needs to be resolved for themselves. And environment or go green is one of the key elements. And the whole startup ecosystem has found out spaces, whether it be in finance, whether it be in technology or manufacturing, around or health, where they can go and find out their projects or their ideas basis the go green. And that is also being motivated because most of the companies, if you see now, have something like an innovation center, an innovation garage. And most of these innovation centers and organizations focus is for future of mobility, which means going green. Find out solutions, materials, opportunities where you can reduce the carbon footprint. And it's from a broader perspective. It's not just from a business perspective. And to give you one single example is now India is talking about disposal of tires. It's a huge thing. Like, so every manufacturing company has a responsibility of disposing or getting a carbon credit for all the rubber that they have sold during the year.
Great.
And for doing that, it's a big cost, and people will have to focus on innovative ways of doing things. So there'll be a lot of employment around young people, startups, and ideas to work around. So I think this whole concept of green growth is going to be the foundation again for future, and the driving is also the generation who would live the future.
Right.
So it's an exciting time to see how it grows and gets impacted across industries.
Sure. Now, ladies and gentlemen, we'll take one common question. I think we still have 3-4 minutes left with all of you. And that question is obviously, apart from what we discussed, obviously the budget is in growth direction, taking the country forward and everything, and obviously beneficial for your sectors in some way. My question to you, all of you, is what do you see is missing in the budget? That is one part. And second is, how do you rate this budget? If I ask you out of 10, and Rohit, I will start with you.
Yeah. Well, I think as CFOs, we know that there is a difficult leap of talking about balancing the budget and actually doing it. So there are always, I think, a lot of pulls and pressures from external, internal stakeholders, as we also face in our day-to-day life, and so as our honorable finance minister would face. So, but overall, as I think, as we have heard from all the panelists, it's a budget in the right direction, a lot of focus on growth, and as I said, God is in the execution. So in terms of direction and the framework, I think everything I would give full marks to our honorable finance minister. But how do we actually deliver this? And because there has to be more stringent monitoring mechanisms to ensure that all budget announcements are turned into reality sooner than later. historically we have seen sometimes great announcements made but not followed with the proper execution. I think this time the stage is well set for India Inc. And all of us, that if done right, this could really accelerate the path of India's growth and progress over the years to come.
Sure. Hemanji?
Thank you, Amolji. Well, it has, touched all the right chords. And not only does it touch it, it's kind of really from the provisions that they have put on the table, they have thought it through. So I won't say they have missed anything. And as I would say, what I would love to see is how they execute it. And believe me, if even if they execute a large portion, and even not 100%, but even a large percentage of that, if they execute it well, I am giving them 9 out of 10, possibly, or even 10 out of 10, because this will, really, really propel us into another league. In a time when corporates are coming to term with green, I mean, I'm just using the word green for SDG and everything. A country's budgetary process is devoted or has devoted a significant portion of their one of the seven Saptarishis to green. Okay, so 1/7 of your budget has been devoted to green. That speaks volumes of your vision and your ability to think into the future. So yeah,
Sure.
I'm very, very excited and hopeful. We just
Sure.
need to now see the execution.
Absolutely. Sandeepji?
So Amal, what I personally feel is, one of the aspects that probably have not brought too much of excitement in the minds of people is on personal income tax. Probably since this was the last full budget of the current government, as we are, in the year of elections, probably a little more was expected from the finance minister in terms of giving the benefits, because inflation is all-time high. Some of the limits, say for instance under ATC, has remained stagnated at 1,50,000, for years together. So I think in the segment of personal income taxes, there were a lot of representations being made, to the ministry to align the rates in terms of some of these issues like inflation, etc. But while the new income tax regime has been tinkered a bit, the new income tax, for the benefit of the audience, is a regime that was introduced in 2020, which was, considered to be a much more simpler regime. And, this was a tax regime where people probably could have paid taxes without claiming any exemptions or deductions. So I think there is a lot of emphasis now on the new income tax, which was introduced in 2020. I mean, she has much said that it is going to be the default scheme, while the old regime will continue as optional, and people can always, try and go back to that.
Right.
But I think probably this was something that people were expecting a little more relief on. And the second thing is about angel tax, which is for the startups. I think while announcements on startup sides were made in terms of extending the eligibility period for incorporation and all that, or for the window to get extended till the next year, plus also on the maintenance of 51% shareholding by one more year, or by 3 more years, from 7 years to 10 years. But I think angel tax is something that has always been a bone of contention between the investors and the income tax department. So it is a tax which is levied on any capital raise which is done by startups, and all this while it was applicable only if the capital raise is over the fair market value from resident investors. Now it will apply also to the non-resident investors putting money into India. So that, I think, possibly may not go too well with the startup community.
Yeah, right, Sandeep. In fact, people are a little upset over the whole insurance part. I just did a session sometime back with BFSI leaders where we had insurance panelists as well. I asked the same question, but on the tax slab and overall, the old regime and the new regime, I think quite a confusion there right now. Let's see
Right.
how it shapes up. Jyotsnaji, let me come to you and take your perspective in terms of what is missing and how do you rate the budget?
Yeah. Rather than missing, what I would say is certainly over the last couple of years, the budget has been much more elaborate and focused. But what could be in as a progressive thing is to go and, because as CFOs, what we do before building budget is go back and look what we did last year and how it fared out. And particularly when you take the government budgets, particularly with reference to the schemes that they announce or the major schemes that they announce, it is very important for us to get a feel of effectiveness of those schemes, because you're increasing the allocation to certain schemes, reducing to certain schemes or certain states. And it's critically important in a summarized way. Before you talk about allocations to the scheme, you also have an insight into the effectiveness, maybe a simple index because time is short. But I think that would be really good to get that level of transparency, because some things could not work. And that should be easily acceptable, because it has been observed in this budget that certain schemes where the allocation or the actual utility exceeded last year's allocation, but the current allocations are lower. And those need to be looked into finer prints, whether they have moved forth or no. So I think that's an area of expectation or improvement to give much more insights in a snapshot way around the major expenditures. That's what I would expect around the budget. Coming on to, I think, yes, others have spelled out everything, so I won't go to repeat it, but my rating would be around 8 for this budget.
Sure. To your point, Jyotsnaji, I think that was quite meaningful for me to learn from all of you and understand your perspective and how do you view and rate the budget. Thank you so much, Rohit ji, Hemant ji, Sandeep ji, and Jyotsna ji. Madhavi left early because she had other commitments, but thank you so much, for sharing your perspective here on this particular show and taking out time. And thank you so much, dear readers and viewers, for tuning into this show. Thank you so much.
Thank you,
Thank you,
everyone.
Amolji. Thank you,
Thank you,
everyone.
Amol. Thank
Have a
you,
nice day.
everyone.
Bye.
Thank you.